Good morning. Today we're going to learn a little bit about computers and hopefully have a little fun while we do that. So first I would like to start with dictionary.com's definition. A computer is a programmable electronic device designed to accept data, perform prescribed mathematical and logical operations at high speed, and display the results of those operations. Mainframes, desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones are some of different types of computers. I'd like to expand on that by saying the British dictionary has a definition that's involves a little bit more. They say it's a device, usually electronic, that processes data according to a set of instructions. The digital computer stores data in discrete units and performs arithmetical and logical operations at very high speed. Whereas the scientific definition is that it's a programmable machine that performs high-speed processing of numbers as well as text, graphics, symbols, and sound. All computers contain a central processing unit that interprets and executes instructions, input devices such as keyboards and a mouse, through which data and commands enter the computer, memory that enables the computer to store programs and data, and output devices such as printers and display screens that show the results after the computer has processed the data. So, now that we know what the definition of a computer is, let's talk about computers and people's response. So, although many people believe computers are a 20th century invention, computer devices, albeit not electronic ones, have been around for centuries. One example of this is the abacus, which was, and still is, used to perform mathematical computations. Still, for those who have not used computers before, the first reaction is often fear at the idea of using one. For most of us, that fear is probably based on not wanting to make a mistake or look like we are dumb. So if I might quote Barbara Kingsolver in the Poisonwood Bible, I've seen how you can't learn anything when you're trying to look like the smartest person in the room. So let's remember, no one was born knowing everything, and we all have to learn how to walk before we can run. With that in mind, let's learn a little bit about computers. Getting a little basic knowledge will make you feel more comfortable and maybe help alleviate some of those fears, especially that fear of the unknown and of appearing like we're not very knowledgeable. So let's start by looking at the types of computers and the technological evolution. The first computers were huge room-sized devices, and those were known as mainframes. Those still exist, but not to the degree that they did at first. Technology advanced and allowed the components in computers to become smaller. So then came desktop computers, like this one here. Okay, desktop computers have a processor and memory stored in one portion. We usually call this the processor, sometimes called the case. There is an output device, a screen on which you can read what is happening in the computer. There are input devices like the keyboard and the mouse to help you enter the data into the computer. There are also laptops. As technology advanced and the components got smaller, we could downsize from this processor into a processor stored in the case of the laptop. So the portion of the laptop that has the keyboard generally has the processor built into that section and the screen, the display screen here that we look at. Once laptops were in use, people wondered if there was a way to make things even better. So we developed tablets. Tablets basically are all one piece, although some now may have a separate like stand. The processor has the screen on top of it, and the keyboard is not a separate device, but it's actually a touch on the screen. You can type in your keyboard. Next, we moved down to smartphones, which is basically the combination of a cell phone and a computer joined into one. And again, the touch screen allows you to type in or slide things around and still have all your data. Because of the size, things maybe look a little different on our smartphone than they do on our tablet and on our laptop, but basically they're all computers doing the same thing. Technology is still continuing to advance, and the latest is having a watch. I don't have one, but there are watches where you're actually a computer. You can do your texting, you can do your phone calls. Everything that's on your phone can be on your watch. Who knows what tomorrow's going to bring? I mean, maybe there'll be a little postage stamp size that you just stick on your, like a badge on your shirt, and then you can just talk into it, look at it, whatever. Computers will continue to change and will continue to adapt. But for those who have not and aren't comfortable with computers, you have to start somewhere. So let's start with looking at a desktop and a laptop, because these days they're very, very similar. The first thing you need to know is computers consist of two portions. One is hardware, and that refers to all the physical parts of the computer, all the computer itself and any attachments. So again, that's the processor, the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor. But it also refers to things like speakers and printers and cameras. My laptop has a camera built in. This desktop does not, but we could attach a camera. We could set one up here and plug it into the computer, and then it would be part of that computer hardware. Besides the hardware, there is the software, and the software refers to the programs, apps, which is short for applications, updates, and drivers that can be installed on the device to accomplish a given task. So examples of software are the Microsoft Office suite that allows you to write letters, do computations in spreadsheets, and all those kinds of things, create flyers in Publisher. So that is software that can be installed on your device. There is one special kind of software that computers have. It varies from device to device, but that is the operating system. And I'm going to share with you the definition that I got from techterms.com. So an operating system, or OS, is the software that communicates with the hardware and allows all the other programs to run. It's composed of what's called the system software, which is the fundamental files that your computer needs in order to boot up. That's the starting process, and to function. So every computer has this operating system that provides basic functionality for the device. Some operating systems are Windows, and there's various versions of Windows. There is the Mac operating system, which is for Apple Mac computers. There is a iOS operating system. There's Linux. So those are all ones you might hear about and learn about over time. Now that you know the difference between the hardware and the software, I'd like to take a look at perhaps you just got a computer, or maybe you're planning to get one, and you're concerned about how do I go about starting? What do I need to do to start? So I'd like to look at the cables, because that's the confusing part for most people, is you get the pieces, the processor, the monitor, the keyboard. How do you connect it all together to make it work? So we're going to look at those connections and cables so that we can understand how to set the computer up and make it work. First, we're going to start with the power cable, because for most desktops and laptops, you're going to plug them into an electrical outlet. And this is the cable or cord that allows you to do that, to get power to power your device. So this photo shows you various types of power cords. The most common one is going to be the C13. This is the one that's used in the United States and for most devices. The other two shown on this page are for specialized devices or for use in other countries. Next, let us look at, I'll start with the information that I got from a guide to computer ports and adapters from Laptop Magazine, an online source. And I will have a citation page at the end of this video so you can see all the sources where we found this information to share with you. Avram Pilch in Guide to Computer Ports and Adapters says, today's computer ports and mobile devices are available with a wide array of ports, from traditional USB to newfangled USB Type-C and Thunderbolt 3 ports. We're not going to look at all of those. Even if you're familiar with the most common connectors, it can be a challenge to figure out what wires or adapters you need to plug your device into a monitor, TV, network, or peripheral. So when you're shopping for your device, it helps to know, am I going to use this desktop with a printer? Am I going to be using it to connect to my TV for gaming or visuals? Am I just strictly going to be using the desktop or laptop and not need those connections? And because it makes a big difference in which cables you need, and knowing which cables you need, checking that those come with it, or remember that you'll need to buy those in addition to the actual device. So most computers, both laptops and desktops, and even tablets and some smartphones, although some of the newer ones don't have them, have what's known as an audio jack. This picture shows the audio jack, and those are usually a 3.5 millimeter jack. It's also known as the headphone jack. So this is where you're going to plug the cable from the computer or from the speaker or headphone into the computer. This jack is the Ethernet jack. And a lot of you will recognize this. This looks like the old connection where you would plug your landline phone into the outlet on the wall to get your telephone connection. So the Ethernet ports look very similar, and that's because they were kind of designed the same way. Originally, wired networks were designed to run through an outlet similar to a telephone jack, and you plugged your cable from that outlet into the computer to allow your network to work. Over here, okay. So this next jack is called a VGA, and this is the video graphics array. It's one of the first other ports or outlets. So this is what the port looks like on the computer, and the plug would have the opposite pins to go into those holes in the outlet. More modern computers don't have this VGA port. Older ones do. And this allowed connection to your television or to a projector in order to show video. Newer ones have changed, and they are now using what's called HDMI. We'll move to that one next. So the HDMI port looks like this one here, and I'll show you a cable too to show the end of it, how it fits into that port. But this is a really popular port nowadays because it allows you to connect your television, external monitors, projectors, those types of things. So HDMI stands for high definition, multimedia interface. That's right. High definition multimedia interface. So it sends audio and video through that port. This is a USB cable, and it would connect into a port that's very similar. It's rectangular in shape. One side is open, one side is filled. So you may have to flip it around to get it to fit right into the port. But these are used, well, let me back up. USBs come in two types. This is type A. It's the long rectangular one. And this is known, USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. And it's the most common type of laptop connector these days. This is how keyboards and mice, external mice, can be connected. More and more computers are moving to where you have wireless connections and don't need these ports. But depending on the age of your device, this is a way to connect to those. Another thing that USBs allow for is the USB port. You can plug in a small device that's known as a USB drive, also called either a thumb drive or a flash drive. And those can be used to store data from your computer. So if you want to save a file and keep the memory on your computer clear, you can store it to this data device. This is the other type of USB device. It is a type B. And you won't find it actually on the computer, but you may find it on what are known as the peripherals. A lot of printers, things called hubs where you can connect multiple devices, and docking stations have this type. It's a smaller than the type A. And what you'll find often is a cable with a type A at one end that connects into your computer, type B at the other end that connects into your printer. Okay, now that you've looked at all your cables and all the ports that they connect into, you should be able to connect everything up, plug it in, and be ready to go. This is about as long as we want our video to go this week. So next week we'll come back and we'll look at actually using our computer. Remember, now you're all set up and ready. So the basics we're going to look at next week will include turning on the computer, logging in if that's necessary. Most public access computers, you have to log in with a password. On your personal computer, you may not, unless you choose to set that as an option to protect your data. If you have multiple people in the household, might be a good idea. We'll look at using the mouse and the keyboard, how we navigate from the start menu, the drives, the programs that are on your computer, your libraries, where the data stores, where your computer stores your data, and your control panel to help set the settings for your computer. We'll look at browsers and surfing the web. We'll look at software installation or removal, and files and file extension names, because in order to save documents or things you create on your computer, you'll need to know how to name them correctly to save them. We'll also look at printing and then logging off and shutting down. So see you next week.